All right, well, hello and welcome to the Elliott School of International Affairs Online Alumni Panel. My name is Josh Fulton and I am the Assistant Director of Graduate Admissions here at the Elliott School. So just a couple things before I introduce our panelists this evening. I wanted to quickly thank you all so much for tuning in today and bearing with us as we move all of our admitted student events to virtual content as we navigate through this global pandemic that we're facing. We want to make sure that we are keeping everyone safe and hope that you all are staying healthy and that your quarantines so far have been productive and as much fun as they possibly can be. So now I want to quickly cover a couple talking points of how this session will run and instructions for our attendees. So real quick, I want to go over the fact that please make sure that your microphones are muted at all times. We want to make sure that you can only hear myself and our panelists as clearly as possible with no background noises or interruptions. I have already set up the session to mute you when you have entered the WebEx session. However, please just double check that the microphone button either next to your name in the participant list or on the bottom horizontal toolbar where you see my video feed is colored red with a dash through the, through the microphone, meaning that you are muted. The next point that I wanted to cover is please make sure that your webcams are also off. This feature is also located on the bottom horizontal toolbar below my video feed and should be colored red with a vertical dash across the camera icon. The only webcams that should be on are mine and our 4 alumni panelists. It's not that we don't want to see your bright, shining faces. We just want to make sure that the only individuals that you are seeing are our panelists when they are answering your questions. The third point is when you do have questions for our panelists that you would like to address, please type them in the chat box feature in the lower right-hand corner of your screen. If you do not see a chat box feature, you can open it by going to, once again, the horizontal toolbar located on the bottom of your screen below my video feed, where you will see a chat bubble icon to open or close the chat box. I will look at those questions as you type them and ask them to our panelists directly in the order that they were received in. And when you do have a question you'd like to ask, please feel free to address those questions to everyone in the chat box so that if any other admitted student has a similar question, they can also see that it has already been asked. And also please feel free to address questions generally to all panelists or to a specific panelist. If it is to a specific panelist, please just let me know who you'd like it to be addressed to so that I can address to that specific individual. Another note is that I'm also recording this live session as well. So if you would like to view the session again, please feel free to email us at esiagrad@gwu.edu. And I'll have one of my colleagues type that email in the chat box feature as well, just in case if you weren't able to jot that down. And we can send you the downloadable and streaming links. I will also make sure that this recorded session is uploaded into our admitted student website and also into our weekly admitted student newsletter that I send every Monday. The last item I want to cover is in terms of timing. I will conduct this panel or this evening right up until 7 p.m. Eastern time. I will announce a notification when it is 5 minutes till the hour and provide the panelists one final question to answer. If there are still any outstanding questions that we did not get to during the session, please email them to us once again at esiagrad@gwu.edu, and we will help either address your question or put you in contact with one of our alumni representatives to help answer any other questions that you have. All right, so without further ado, I believe that should cover all of the basics for this session or this evening. So I will now introduce our 4 alumni panelists by telling you their names, their respective programs, and graduating years. And then I will allow each of them to briefly introduce themselves a little bit further. While our panelists are being introduced, please feel free to type or begin typing in any questions into the chat box feature that you have for our panelists. And we'll start addressing those at the beginning after they have introduce themselves. So to start us off is Dara Phillip, who is a 2017 alumna of the International Affairs program. So Dara, I'll have you start. Could you just introduce yourself a bit further with a bit more about yourself, where you work, how long you've worked there, and one of your favorite things about the Elliott School, be it your favorite Elliott School class or professor, a student organization you were a part of, or a memory made.
Thank you, Josh, for organizing this, and thanks to everyone who's attended. It's unfortunate that we weren't able to do this in person, but I hope that our comments will still be helpful for everybody. So at the Elliott School, as Josh mentioned, and currently I'm working at the International Technology Inc., which is a small advisory firm based here in DC that works primarily with Japanese government, quasi-governmental, and corporate clients to address a range of their concerns regarding U.S. policy and U.S. federal government regulations. My role in the organization is as a trade and investment analyst. So I specifically focus on U.S. trade policy and U.S. foreign investment policy. I cover a range of U.S. government agencies, obviously the U.S. Trade Representative. In addition, I do look at the Export-Import Bank, USAID, and so on and so forth. I've been in this role for a year now. I started in March 2018, and this was a position that actually required a master's degree, so it was directly applicable to the time that I spent at the Elliott School. In terms of my favorite experience at the Elliott School, I'll mention my favorite class, which was Asian Security with Professor Mike Mochizuki. What I really enjoyed about the class is that Professor Mochizuki is, so at the Elliott School, you'll be able to take courses with both adjunct professors and full-time professors from GW. Professor Mochizuki is a full-time professor, so he definitely has a very his class really emphasized critical thinking in terms of the issues facing U.S. security dynamic. And so he made stepping outside of the box about issues that many of us are now working in. I think that experience is really helpful and something that I wouldn't have had if I didn't go to the Elliott School. And so, yeah, that's something that stayed with me and something that I'm grateful for.
Great, thank you, Dara. Our next alumni panelist is David Oaken, who is a 2016 alumnus of the Latin American and Hemispheric Studies degree program. So very similar, David, if you just want to introduce yourself a bit further with a little bit more about yourself and your work experience and your favorite Elliott School memory or class or professor you took.
It's really great to be here, and thank you all for tuning in. So yeah, as Josh mentioned, I graduated from the Latin American Hemispheric Studies program. So that is one of GW's smaller cohort programs. So I'm not sure if anyone here was admitted to or interested in some of those smaller programs. But what I really liked about the program was the opportunity to really develop that cohort feel. Your capstone becomes a lot more intimate. The relationship with professors, of course, as well. So currently, I work at the U.S. Department of State. I work in the Bureau of Consular Affairs. So if you've been watching the news, it's been a pretty insane last couple of weeks as we've been working to repatriate several tens of thousands of citizens who, for one reason or another, found themselves stuck overseas as all of this was developing. My day job is actually helping families whose children have been abducted internationally. And my portfolio covers a couple countries in South America. So for me, the Elliott School and the degree program with the Latin American and Hemispheric Studies program was just incredibly relevant to what I'm doing now. I get to use my Spanish language abilities every day and put that to use, as well as the knowledge that I gained from doing research in the region as well. So one thing that I wanted to highlight in terms of a good experience at GW is actually also a course. And this is one that is, I believe it still is a core requirement for the MAIA program, that I took it just because I thought it was interesting, which is history and its uses in international affairs. And it's one of those courses that can seem dry, but we read 1 to 2 books every week for class, and it was really eye-opening to see kind of how narratives are created, the impact on great powers over the course of history. And of course, like currently with everything that you hear about fake news and just being able to gain a lens through which you can apply the skills that you're learning through your program, through your degree program, and into your policy memos and all of that as well. So, yeah.
Perfect. Thank you, David. Our next alumni panelist is John Van Oudenaren, who is a 2014 alumnus of the Asian Studies program. So very similar to your predecessors. John, if you would like to just quickly introduce yourself as well.
Yeah, thanks for having me. And once again, echo David's regrets about not being able to do this in person, but hopefully this will be valuable anyway. So I currently am the Assistant Director of Political and Security Affairs at the National Bureau of Asian Research, which is a small Asia policy focused think tank in Washington, D.C. Specifically, I manage our PLA conference program, our Maritime Awareness Project program, and then we have a project looking at China's emerging vision for the global and regional orders. It's funny that David and Dara mentioned both of those courses because I took both of those classes and thought they were fantastic. Specifically, Professor Mochizuki's Asian security course, I think is really good for giving you some intellectual frameworks to think about Asian security and to kind of familiarize you with some of the key literature there. We'll do another one. I'll do a plug for the Politics of China course. And if you can get to Politics of China 2 with Bruce Dixon, I thought that was a really strong course because you do a really deep dive into sort of different aspects of the Chinese political system. And I still find myself looking back to various things or articles or concepts from that class. So I would make a plug for that one.
Great, thank you, John. And our last panelist of this evening is Christina Bobo, who is a 2016 alumna of the International Affairs program. So Christina, if you'd like to take it away and introduce yourself as well.
Thank you, and hi everyone. Thank you for being here. So I work currently at the International Monetary Fund at the African Department. So under me, there are 4 countries currently: Burundi, Malawi, Zambia, and Zimbabwe. And as you can see, with the virus is spreading, our workload kind of tripled or even more. We're working non-stop trying to collaborate with World Bank and other organizations to get as much fund as possible, as quickly as possible to Sub-Saharan Africa. And of course to the other countries as well. But I work on Sub-Saharan Africa. So it's an amazing place, and I've been working here since I graduated from the Elliott School. So it's nearly 4 years now. I was in different positions, but right now I'm research analyst. In the Elliott School, I was doing the Masters in International Affairs with the concentration on conflict and conflict resolution. Definitely wouldn't have been possible to get a job at the IMF without the Elliott School. But at the moment, well, I'm not doing, excuse me, not doing exactly yet what I wanted. But it's been definitely extremely useful, especially for the professors and the connections we made through the Elliott School with the peers as well. And also the most outstanding help or support from the Elliott School is I think the professors. I'm still in touch with many of them, and they they've been incredible help throughout the last 4 years at any point of time since I graduated, and I still keep in touch with them. And my favorite class was with Ambassador James Jeffrey, Foreign Policy towards the Middle East. And it's really just a hands-on course, very exciting every single class. And if you're interested about the Middle East, then it's especially good. But even otherwise, you just really learn how policies made. We kind of played the National Security Council, so it's just very hands-on and very practical and useful class.
Great, thank you, Christina. So now I invite you all tuning in today as admitted students to feel free to start typing in the chat box in the lower right-hand corner of your screen. Any questions that you have for the alumni panelists tuning in today. This is a Q&A session, so we want to make sure that all of your questions are getting answered by the alumni being represented tonight. So feel free to type in any questions that you have generally for our alumni, or more specifically to maybe one specific person or a few specific people. So feel free to type them in the chat box. I will go ahead and start asking or addressing questions that I have written down that are frequently asked questions. So to start us off, since we're talking a little bit more about your time at the Elliott School, I wanted to address why you chose the Elliott School. So I think we'll start off with, let's go with Sarah, or why you chose the Elliott School, and what made you choose the Elliott School over maybe some of the other programs that you applied to?
So for me, it was really a practical matter of financing. So I chose the Elliott School because I felt like the other programs were extremely expensive, and I didn't understand why they were so expensive. I was also offered a FLAS fellowship during my first year, so I didn't have to pay, and I was able to get a stipend on top of that. And so that decision making was really what swayed me. In combination, I was considering schools also in New York and outside of DC, and I felt as though if I'm interested in international relations, it makes sense to study in DC. I think that this wasn't necessarily your question, but I think it was a good choice in retrospect, especially after speaking with people who've gone to other master's programs, because I think that at GW, you really do get a lot of bang for your buck. And in reality, the program does prepare you for the type of work in DC afterwards. And so, it was really cost effective in my opinion.
Great, thank you. David, same question.
Yes, no, I love this question. So I agree with everything Dara said. I think for everyone tuning in, obviously this is an extremely personal decision, something that's going to affect your finances, your bank accounts, and all of that. So on one sense, follow the money. On the other hand, as Dara was saying, think about the cost benefit. And so for me, the trade-off was, the Elliott School has all of the classes in the evening, so I was able to intern and work during the day, go to events, build my network, and then still, have the classes in the evening. Also, as was kind of mentioned towards the beginning of this call, the ability to have that nice balance between tenured faculty and adjunct faculty who are working in the field, was something that I felt that the Elliott School did a really good job of highlighting, bringing in fresh adjunct faculty for some of these courses. And so that was actually how I got my client for my capstone, was through a connection that I made from an adjunct faculty, which then in turn led towards partly how I got to my employment now. And then again, for me, I was looking for, I'd come from, my undergrad was a really big state school, so I was looking for more of an intimate master's program, and that's something that the Elliott School offered in the form of the Latin American Hemispheric Studies program. So that was really a draw for me.
All right, thank you. John, would you like to answer that as well?
Yeah, so I would echo, of course, a lot of the things that Dara and David just said, but a couple other things. One of the things that drew me to the Elliott School was the caliber of China faculty at the time, and I think many of them are still there in the Asian Studies program. So being able to take classes with faculty that are very strong have a very strong academic record in terms of publishing and being well regarded in the field, but also people with policy experience. So, for example, Robert Sutter, who I encourage you to take classes with if you're interested in Asian studies, he was the National Intelligence Officer for East Asia for many years. And having that type of policy experience can kind of help square the circle. So you can kind of get both sides of the coin. I feel like sometimes if you just talk to policy people, you're going to only be in the weeds. And if you only talk to academics, you're going to kind of only get the bird's eye view and these grand structures and theorizing. So the Elliott School, you kind of get a nice happy medium. And I think that's a really strong point. And then I would definitely second what David said about the opportunity to take classes at night. And I think that's especially, it's key throughout the program. It allows you to work and take classes at the same time. It's especially important towards the end, where your internship, whatever internship or maybe part-time job that you're doing is probably going to be your best bet to segue into something else. So I did an internship at the National Defense University and then was brought on as a research assistant there after I finished my coursework. So other programs in DC, I know some of them make you take classes in the day, which can kind of limit your ability and your competitiveness for internships.
Great, thank you. And Christina, if you'd like to answer that as well.
Yeah, sure. So I love the question because I feel like it was very important in my career that I actually studied here in DC. So I chose it because obviously all the organizations where I wanted to work, they were around here. So what is, better than being a block away from where I actually want to work. So that was the main reason. And the secondary reason, obviously, I like that the classes were in the evening because in the very beginning, my goal was to do as many internship as possible and work as much as possible. And that's how I managed to do it, that all the classes started after work. So from the beginning, I was able to do almost like full-time internship. And that really made a difference at the end.
Great, thank you. So we have some student questions coming in, so I'll start addressing those. So the first question is to just kind of generally anyone who would like to answer this question. He asks, what degree does quantitative analysis play in your current role? And what pre-Elliott work or Elliott School classes and software programs best prepared you for quantitative work?
I can maybe answer.
Go ahead.
All right, so just quickly, since I work as a research analyst, I use a lot of programs and I work with data on a daily basis. I didn't plan for that, but when I was at the Elliott School, I did get that advice that take some quantitative classes. So I took SPSS, and I can't remember what was the name of the other class, but I specifically took these classes because they advised that in my career it will make a difference, and when I apply for jobs. The only thing is, like, I wish I didn't take SPSS, but rather Python or other more popular programs. But otherwise, I think it's an important component to have like a quantitative based course or to take a course like this.
I add that in terms of preparation, that might help you in the School of Quantitative Analysis class. Any introductory statistics course would probably be helpful, but otherwise, it is really an intro class for you to get the basics of SPSS. I think that it is helpful to have on your resume as you think about what you want to do with your career. If you already know specifically that you don't want to do quantitative analysis, then obviously there's no need to take it. But I think especially for people who do development work, which looks like a lot of things in DC actually, from working at IMF, World Bank to working at like a smaller government contractor, having those skills is definitely helpful for getting the job.
Great, thank you. So I'll move on to the next question, which is, have any of the panelists attended a program online? And if so, did the program meet your learning expectations and accessibility to material and the professors?
I can jump in. I'm not sure if by program you mean course. I did take one of the econ courses online by Dr. Moore, who is a tenured economics international affairs professor. And he had an incredibly robust online offering. Certainly did not lack for challenging course material in the slightest. So I think, your mileage will vary. But if that's something that is of interest to you, I would say work with your academic advisor and ask what kind of courses are offered online and reach out to the professor and see kind of what the materials are. But for the econ course that I took, yeah, it was great.
Okay, great. So this might be a little bit more of a specific question, but the student asks, since international students cannot work outside of campus, particularly speaking for the first year, she wanted to ask, or they wanted to ask, what is the applicant job ratio for on-campus jobs? If anybody has any knowledge about that.
So since I am from Hungary, I was studying in England, but I came to GW, so as an international student. First year, so of course I had to get scholarship, which is kind of difficult, but it's worth all the time. And first year I only did unpaid internships, but I also did was that teaching assistant from the first year, first in business administration, for forensic science, all kinds of weird things, but it did help. So I was doing that, and also for board and I lived in international student house, which I would definitely suggest for every international students to look it up. You have to apply, but they are very helpful, and they can give you scholarship as well. So that was a huge help for me, that I could get scholarship for room and board. Plus I could work there as well for 4 hours every night, what they would deduct from other expenses. So that was the first year. From every little bit, I managed to get everything together.
Great, thank you, Christina. Our next question is how easy is it to engage with current contemporary cases and work with faculty to write short pieces on them, not a thesis? So once again, how easy is it to engage with current contemporary cases and working with faculty to write short pieces?
So I guess I'll kind of interpret the question, how much are contemporary cases used in the classroom, I guess, as opposed to writing pieces with professors. But I think that's kind of a central part of the curriculum, at least in the Asian Studies program. In all of our courses, we were encouraged to do case studies and things like that. So that was a key part of the program. in my opinion. So the time that you're there, you can actually take some of those case studies and you know, use them to develop sort of deep knowledge in a more kind of narrow area.
I'll just jump in and say, so we at the Elliott School, we have something called the International Affairs Review, which is a graduate student run academic journal. So when at my time in the Elliott School, I was an associate for that. And there's kind of two ways that you can engage on contemporary topics. You can write shorter op-ed that can, that you would submit for publication, or longer, not thesis length, but, more in the, academic article term paper length. And it goes through a very rigorous, editing and selection process as well. So there's a faculty advisor that you can work with on that, or if you just have a faculty that you wanted to co-write something with, or you just wanted to just be the sole author and kind of start building your street cred in academia.
I would also add that there's our skills courses on writing for international affairs. I think one skills course in particular is designed for students who are interested in writing op-eds. And so if that's something that you're interested in, I think that at the end of that course, I didn't take it, so I can't speak from 100% knowledge, but my understanding is at the end of that course, you'd have something that you'd be able to submit to a publication if you'd like.
Great, thank you all. How would you describe the student-faculty relationship at the Elliott School?
I think it's pretty good, especially for master students. I think I didn't attend the Elliott School as an undergrad, but I think the faculty, it's more of a two-way street, and a lot of times the topics are so complex and so difficult that I think the faculty actually benefit and learn new things from interaction with their master's students, whether it's something that a student picks up in an internship that they're doing, or they're just really sort of deeply researching a paper. So I think a lot of times I think the relationship is quite good, and I remember a lot of times after class, classes would wrap up and you'd be staying after class for 20-25 minutes just to chat about these things with the professor, because they share that passion and that interest and excitement. So I think it's a strong relationship.
100% agree. I think what struck me the most was how engaged the adjunct faculty were. They usually are people that have day jobs and then leave those day jobs and come teach in the evening. You would think that, that's kind of it, right? That's all they would give. And that was not my experience. They were open to meeting up for coffee, for lunch, obviously engaging in emails back and forth, staying after class. I look at myself now, I've been out of school almost 5 years, out of grad school. And when I come home from work, I don't want to talk to anyone, so it's to me, it just demonstrated, how giving they are.
Great, thank you. So now we have a great question or questions about Capstone. So how are the projects/organizations selected? Do students have to choose among a set of options, or can they somehow influence the available options?
So I'll just jump in on this one. It's all up to the student for Capstone, unless things have changed since I graduated. The student will select, so you as the student in the course will select what your topic will be, working with your classmates. So, if you only want to work on one particular thing, then you have to find people who are also interested in that particular thing. If you don't have a preference on the topic, then of course you can just work with people who you'd work well with. And in terms of finding a client for the capstone, that's also student driven. And so you have to be the one who's sending out emails to organizations and doing the networking that's necessary to get a client for your project.
think the capstone I did may have predated what you guys did, because we didn't have to find a client for ours. So maybe my information is out of date. So I'll let David and Christina talk about their experiences.
So the Capstone Project, honestly, it wasn't my favorite, but I definitely made lifelong friends with the people in my group. It was 5 of us, and till today we all the time come together. It was kind of difficult for us because we couldn't find client. It took a long time, and then what was the most challenging part for the capstone is what our professor kind of wanted us to do that didn't exactly align with what the client wanted us to do, which is kind of natural because that's, one part it's academic, the other one is, really like real life. So they had very, very specific set of goals, both of them for us. And it was very hard to kind of match them. If we pleased one, the other one didn't exactly, we were going to a wrong direction. So, but at the end, we managed to kind of get everything together, and it's a great experience. It just, maybe I would choose different client or a different topic, which is maybe a little bit more manageable. But it's definitely a good experience.
I'm just laughing at everything, Christina, that you're saying, because I think that's also the point of it, to kind of force you not to fail by any means, but to show you that in the real world, for whatever that means, you're going to be pulled in a lot of different directions, and you have to figure out how to manage that interpersonally with your groups, how to, be responsive to your client, even though they're not paying you, but also, meet the other expectations, the academic side. I love the experience. I think it, on the one hand, the type A folks get to really organize everything for the group, and the more relationship building folks get to go out and kind of sell and find the client. You get to work on branding, how you present yourselves. I thought hopefully you'll get to travel as long as the world is healing, and all of that, but it's a crazy experience for sure.
Great, thank you all for your information on Capstone, because I know that we get a lot of questions about that, so I think that's really important information to go over. I really like this next question that I'm going to address to you all. What advice would you give to your previous self at the eve of starting at the Elliott School?
Oh, I don't know if everyone's waiting for me to start or if nobody knows what to say. That's a tough question. I think that I would say to really focus on what it is that you want to accomplish at the end of it, because there are so many different things that you can do. Every semester, you have decisions to make on the kind of course that you're going to take. You're going to have to decide whether or not you find an internship. If you keep the internship you have, all of these things are decisions that every individual has to make and that no one can make for you while you're in the program. And so I think that if you have some way either for you to work towards a goal that you already have while you're at the Elliott School, or at least, narrow down what it is that you want to do, I think that that's the perfect place to start at the very beginning. And that's not to say that everyone needs to know exactly what it is that they want to accomplish while they're in their program. But if you feel sort of unsure, then I think that taking the opportunity to intern at different places and to meet different people and to study different things will really help you narrow it down at the end. And so I would say that, at least, I mean, personally, I don't feel like not having a clear direction really harmed me in the end. But I think that if you have that, it'll just make it easier for you to accomplish what it is that you want to accomplish and to find your ideal job at the end of those 2 years.
just say to piggyback off that, I mean, especially if you're doing your program full time, 2 years actually goes by really quickly. And each semester that you're in there, your focus naturally starts to turn to what's next, right? Are you going to go on to get a PhD? Are you going to go and enter the workforce or re-enter the workforce? And so I would say, especially at the onset, at the eve of starting, as the question said, I'm going to sound like a professor, but like do the reading, like take that first semester and like really sink yourself into being a student again. Whether you're just coming from undergrad and you just got your degree, and so it's not that different, or like me, you had taken a couple of years to do other things and you're coming back. Because like I said, the longer, the closer you get to graduation, right, the more your mind is going to be by capstone and jobs and other things. And so really just enjoy being a student, do the reading. Your first semester is going to set your GPA. Not that that really matters as much in grad school, but enjoy being a student again.
So I would agree with everything that Darren and David just said. I would also say learn how to write concisely and to the point. And that's going to be when you first come into the Elliott School, especially if you're coming out of undergrad, which I wasn't. You're like, oh my gosh, a 20-page paper. Like, how can I hit the 20-page mark? And I noticed that the longer I was there, it was actually easier to write a 20-page paper than it was to write a 5-page paper. So I think, and it's funny because professors don't necessarily care if you're writing a long-winded paper or whatever, but certainly in DC there's what we call the one-page rule, right? That no one is going to read, no one sort of at a certain level is going to read something more than one page front and back. And that for me was really challenging coming out of the Elliott School and some of the jobs that I went on to. One of the jobs was working for a former Assistant Secretary of State, and he wasn't going to sit down and read 10 pages. He was used to reading a page. So I think that's something I would definitely hone, your ability to write concisely and to the point.
I definitely agree with everything what everybody said. If I can add, I would make use of all the resources what is available at the Elliott School, like from the Career Development Center to all the seminars and events. Go for all of them, seriously, like just go for all of them. There is always like good food as well, and tea and coffee and things like that, but you meet with amazing people, all the speakers accessible, they willing to talk to you, which maybe if you meet with them at other places you wouldn't have a chance, but when it's happening at the Elliott School, you do have. So just go for everything, whatever is around you, including with your peers. There are happy hours, and you can just make amazing connections that will serve you well in the future.
Great, thank you. So another great question coming up, not so much about academics, but do you have any recommendations on how to find housing off campus in the DC or DMV area? And is it hard to commute?
I think for finding housing, you can use Craigslist. If you know anyone in DC, that's a great place to start. And also a first introduction to the benefits of networking if you can find a place through someone that you already know. That's what worked out for me. In terms of commuting, I think that like DC is pretty small. I mean, I grew up in New York. It's really tough to get around a city that large. In DC, unless you're really living far out in the suburbs, I think you could easily find a place where you could get to the Elliott School within 45 minutes, maybe an hour if you're really far out. So I don't think that commuting is really difficult. The metro doesn't go to as many places as in other cities, but the DC metro area has a very extensive bus route, or they have very extensive bus routes is what I should say. And so I mean, when you're new to the city, you might want to live really close to a metro line because you might think that it'll help you get to campus faster, but in reality, there are plenty of places, including Georgetown, Cathedral Heights, everywhere on that side of town that really isn't that close to a metro station, but very easy to get to campus because there's a bus that takes you straight there. So I think that that aspect of coming to DC might seem stressful right now, but once you get here, you realize that it's really sort of a manageable city to get around.
Yeah, I'd agree with all of that. I would say the one commute you never think about is the commute from your internship to classes. So I would notice, I would always be like rushing, I'd have class at 5, and I'd be leaving my internship at like 4. I was in Southwest DC, so I'd be leaving it at 4:20, and you just, you're most internships you're not getting paid for, so do yourself the favor and leave that 10 minutes early so you're not just hurrying. Will just add more stress to your already stressed life.
Great, thank you. So Darren, this next question is a little bit more addressed to you specifically. Being a FLAS or Foreign Language Area Studies Fellowship recipient, did you find it more difficult to either work or participate in an internship while studying? They remember seeing online that the fellowship only allows 20 hours of work outside of school.
So in my first year, when I had the class fellowship, I didn't do it in my second year. My first year, I didn't work that first term, which was fine, honestly. Sort of to David's point, having the opportunity to just read for my classes was great. Get oriented with everything that was going on and figure myself out. That was totally fine. In my second term, I did an unpaid internship, which was part-time. And so that was also not an issue. I think that it's a good opportunity to take an unpaid internship because you're receiving the stipend from FLAS. And so, I didn't think that not having that opportunity was an issue. In my second year, I did a full-time internship, which was paid. And so sort of, again, just thinking backwards in terms of where you want to be. I think, at least for me, it felt really difficult to get a paid internship straight out the bat, but having a stipend really made me more comfortable with doing an unpaid internship that I was comfortable with and that I knew would prepare me for the type of paid internship that I wanted. And so I felt like that worked out perfectly fine.
And since we're on the topic of fellowship opportunities, I did want to just address to the rest of the panelists as well. How did you fund your education through fellowships or other funding opportunities? Just to talk about funding opportunities, whether at the Elliott School, GW, or third-party opportunities.
Yeah, so I guess one thing, I think when you apply for the Elliott School, you also apply for the Merit Fellowship, I think. Is that right, Josh?
Correct, yes. So as long as students apply before one of our specific deadlines for either fall or spring, they're automatically reviewed for Elliott School Fellowship opportunities.
So that was great. Obviously that was, if you can get that, look at, be very kind of aware of fellowship timelines. So for example, a lot of fellowships will have like 9-month lead time. So for example, the Boren Fellowship, which sends you abroad for a year to study a language, that I think you need to apply to by like November, like 10 months before you want to do it. So kind of be religious about checking the Career Center site. As far as funding, I think everyone kind of does it a little bit differently. For me, it was a mix of the Elliott School's Merit Fellowship, working, really, I was actually tutoring foreign college students, and loans. So it's kind of, you kind of have to make it work, because it is going to be challenging to work full time and certainly get paid as much. I did have some classmates that were doing full time like 40 hours a week and 16 credit hours. That can be pretty tough. Some people can do it. I know for myself, I think I was probably doing about 30 hours a week of work and internships and then 16 credit hours, which was a lot. I mean, so you are going to be really busy, I think, if you do it, but I think that it's worthwhile.
I just want to chime in and address, I don't want to say a misconception, but perhaps an anxiety of for anyone in the call who maybe didn't get a fellowship through the Elliott School at the time of admission, or didn't get the amount that they were hoping for, or that they were planning for in their budgets. And I just want to say that don't count yourselves out in terms of additional fellowship opportunities during your time as a master's student. I know one thing that John was mentioning was the graduate career center, the graduate student services, which you might not think like would be where you would go to look for fellowships, but they actually have a bunch of opportunities there as well. Also, something that that works in parallel with GW is a private organization called the Walcott Foundation, WOLCOTT. I applied for that at the time of admission, or at the time that I was applying, and was not selected. But they known little like blurb on their website says you can apply again for your second year, and I did, and I got it. And so it's one of those things that kind of like, if at first you don't succeed, well, keep trying. And even after you start, I guess the point of what I'm trying to say is, even after you matriculate and you start, keep looking for funding because you have more semesters to pay for. So it's not all of what do I have right now before I start in August of my first year.
I absolutely agree as well, and especially with you, David. I mean, all what I would say is just like keep trying. I remember it's like having a full-time job looking for just scholarships and fellowships opportunities. I mean, I wasn't eligible for 99% of the scholarships that I could think of, and I think I applied for over 100 before getting to GW, and at the end, I managed to find, but like things came through like $1,000 there, $1,500 there, and then managed to get a bigger one, and then being teaching assistant, and then from my internship they have something, and then when I could actually get paid for 20 hours, then that was helpful, and then just reducing costs every little bit where I could. So actually, yeah, just don't give up. I managed to do it without getting any loan or anything, and I'm an international student, so yeah, and no one really helped me, so you can make it work. Just don't give up.
All right, well, about at that 5-minute marker, so I did just want to provide one final question, maybe two, depending on how many of y'all answer this next question. But Christina and David both brought up the Career Development Center under our Graduate Student Services team at the Elliott School. It focuses just on our graduate students at Elliott. So this question is did you use any of the career development resources or opportunities available for graduate students, and did you find them useful?
Yeah, I think oh, sorry, Christina, go.
Okay, so yeah, because I mentioned it before, I think I visited many times the Career Development Center, and I remember first time I was a bit shy about it, and I wasn't sure what can I get from them, but they turned out very helpful. I went there to review my CV, then to review my was that cover letters, then for one-on-one coaching, and basically everything, and they are just so helpful, like they're having a second pair of eyes, and they advise you, and you take everything on, and you just, yeah, you can make use of it. It's a very, very helpful resource.
I think they still have it. There's like a portal. I think it's when I was there, it was ESCC, and I spent a lot of time on there applying for internships, applying for jobs. I mean, it's basically the same. So I agree with everything that's especially what Christina said. It's kind of a numbers game. One good thing I think about the Career Center is they help you to kind of craft your application. And my philosophy that I think makes sense is don't apply for something half-assed, right? I mean, if you're gonna, if either don't apply at all or really craft a good application, because you know that, especially in DC, there's going to be other people that are putting in a really high quality application. So take every application like a deliverable. Spend time, even though it's a pain in the butt, like rewriting your cover letter 1,700 times. You kind of have to do that, right? And you'll have to do it in the future, when you're between jobs.
Can you hear me? Okay. I would add that the Career Center, even now that I've graduated from GW, I occasionally still get emails from them about job opportunities that alums forwarded to them. And so it's helpful even now, almost 3 years out of the program. And not only do I get emails from them, when I was a student, there were constant events. Constantly, there were potential employers on campus, people talking about their careers, their workplaces, so on and so forth. And I think that the career services, and honestly, the Elliott School as a whole does a great job with providing you with opportunities to be face-to-face with people who can help you to get your first job out or your second job out or even your third job out. And so that was definitely an asset of the Elliott School.
Definitely take advantage of it as soon as you can. I went to a couple like career boot camps where they, just did like resume workshops. Even if you think like, I'm good, I've done that before, I did that in undergrad, I have a job, I'm coming from a job, just do it. It's a different industry, it's a different career, it's a different world being here in DC. And then it's also, like Josh said, it's just for graduate students. So they are hyper focused to what your needs are in that 2-ish years that you're going to be here. And then it's something that you continue to have access to after you graduate as well.
All right, well, it kind of perfectly worked out that it is now exactly 7 p.m. On the East Coast anyway. And this is the end of the online alumni panel. So I first want to thank so much to Dara, David, John, and Christina for being part of our panel this evening and providing your insights and advice into all things Elliott School. And thank you all to all of our admitted students who tuned in this evening. Once again, we have recorded this evening's session and we will be sending out the links to rewatch next week. So please let us know if you'd like them sooner. However, if we're not able to address one of your questions or you think of some questions later, please email us at esiagrad@gwu.edu. And the members of our graduate admissions team can help address your questions and or put you in touch with one of our alumni panelists. So please see the chat box for our contact info. Once again, thank you so much and have a good rest of your evening.